their ma would threaten to send them to the old hag, whom she claimed sacrificed bad children on the flat top of Muckish. Even today, its tabletop shape, often shrouded in mist, gave Declan the shivers. But he and the other tenants were more concerned these days about another character, a real one, who posed a threat to their way of life. "Have you heard Adair's back?" said Michael, who was digging in the channel beside him. "No. That means trouble." "Must be back for hunting season." "Aye, lock up your livestock," Michael laughed. "No laughing matter when he charges you 2 shillings to get back a stray sheep or goat," shouted Rory Bradley, their neighbour Alex's son, shaking his spade. "Me da's fed up going to that pound." "Alex must have paid Murray a small fortune by now," agreed Declan, and stepped back down to dig. The new landlord had quickly made a name for himself as a cold character, who hired a group of surly shepherds from Scotland to watch over the estate in his absence. It was rare to see Adair in Donegal, as he seemed to spend most of his time in Dublin or at his father's home. But he made his presence known when he stayed at Glenveigh. He took a haughty tone with his tenants, and was despised by his staff at Glenveigh Lodge, who dreaded his return. His new land steward, a Scotsman called Murray, had opened an animal pound on the estate, where he held sheep and goats that had strayed, demanding a high fee for their release. But worst of all for Declan's entrepreneurial aspirations, the landlord had declared war on the illegal production of poachine. Rory came sliding along the muddy plank to Declan and whispered so the other men couldn't hear. "You should warn the Sweeneys about distilling on Lough. I heard from Adair's staff. He's planning a raid with the police." Declan tipped his cap at him and continued to dig, but his mind was racing. The Sweeney brothers, Sean and Owen, were small tenant farmers who lived on the neighbouring estate, and regarded themselves as the poachine kings of Donegal. Declan had been serving something of an apprenticeship with them. It helped the family get by on the little means they had. The men had been working that day on the Sweeney's bog patch, but he'd seen no sign of them from late afternoon. When dusk approached, Declan, Michael and Rory joined the other labourers from Garton for a lift home on the rickety cart. It was a clear night, and Declan could see there was going to be a full moon. He began to panic that the brilliant light of the harvest moon would shine a spotlight on the illegal still. He remembered Sean Sweeney had vowed he'd have a batch ready in time for Harvest Home, which they planned to celebrate in their barn tomorrow night. The date coincided this year with Declan's da's 10-year anniversary. They must be on Lough, he thought. He'd have to warn them. The Sweeneys were a fair bit older, but since his father had passed, they'd often looked out for his family, and he'd often depended on them to provide the muscle when he or Michael got into a scrap. As the cart came close to Glenveigh, he mumbled an excuse to his brother. "Tell Ma I've gone to see the priest. I'll be back later." As he jumped off the cart, Michael raised an eyebrow and hollered after him, "I'm going to see Sinead tonight. Think I'll have a better time than ye." Declan laughed. Sinead was their sister Cara's childhood friend. Now, in her late teens, she'd blossomed into quite a beauty and had caught Michael's eye. They had become inseparable. Declan felt some affinity with Sinead, the oldest of the 3 Dermot children. Their mother had died during the Great Hunger, which had driven their father Francis to drink, and he came to rely on her to look after them all as he was drunk most of the time. Declan felt a slight pang of guilt at his part in keeping Donegal awash with booze, but he justified it as it helped keep the roof over their heads. Heading in the direction of Lough, Declan smelt the turf